Early Matters was created to make sure that every child has access to high-quality early learning and care. By doing this, we believe that we will be empowering the workforce of today and building the workforce of tomorrow. I want to take you through a thought exercise. So the question here we have for you is, where would you invest your money? Let's imagine that these three curves are three aspects of a new product your company is developing. And these curves demonstrate where the product is most impactable. The question is, if you have 13 units of money, where would you put your money? Our guess is that you would put your money something like this. It won't come as any surprise to you that this is not a product, but this is a human child. And this is the three aspects of brain development: sensory pathways, language, higher cognitive function. And it turns out we do spend 13 units of money per human. However, we don't spend it like this, we spend it more like this. We spend $10,000 more or less for a year of kindergarten, and then as a state, we spend about $10,000 for first grade, $10,000 for second grade, and on up through 12th grade. So we spend about $130,000 per human. However, you see that we do not spend that money until the first 90% of the child's brain development is already over. This probably isn't the wisest approach, and if we had known back then what we know now about brain development, we might have designed a different approach. Well, you might be thinking, don't we also have other investments that we've made in the community? And we do. About $100 million goes in a year through Workforce Solutions Alamo for low-income childcare scholarships. About $60 million a year goes in through Pre-K for SA that our community voted to approve. And we have about $5 million a year that goes in through the great work of United Way. So if we take all of that and put it on the left side of the line, and on the right side of the line, we put public education, we put the Future Ready work that Up Partnership is doing, we put the Alamo Promise. For every $100 that we invest as a community, only $5 goes in the first 90% of your brain development. This might not be the right way for us to take this on as a community. Let's find out if it's working. We look at kindergarten readiness and the impact of that, because at the end of your 5 years, you're walking into kindergarten, and it just so happens that the Texas Education Agency does an assessment for every child across the state of Texas, and including here in Bexar County, to ask out, are they kindergarten ready? And what we find is that if you take all of the 24,000 children a year that go into kindergarten in Bexar County, wherever they score in their kindergarten readiness score, that as a cohort, they never really pass that number again. In third grade reading, fifth grade math, on up all the way through AP and high school graduation and college matriculation. It becomes in some sorts a de facto ceiling for the rest of their performance. So let's go ahead and take a look at how Bexar County is doing in this metric. Here are the last 5 years of kindergarten readiness scores. And you can see that there has been a bit of a drop off from 64 back in 2021 down to 45 through the depths of COVID, and a little bit of a rebound to 49. What we see is this number is no longer going back up on its own. This is going to take a lot of work. And if 49% becomes our de facto ceiling for third grade reading, fifth grade math, how many children are reading and doing math on grade level, we're in trouble, both for current K-12 as well as our future workforce. Let's come down and take a look at David and Mary and see how a particular family might be taking this on. David and Mary are a newly married young San Antonio family. David is a truck driver. Mary works in early childhood. David makes around $22, $23 an hour. Mary makes around $12. Neither of them get benefits in their job, so they get them on the open marketplace. They're in a one-bedroom. And what you see here is a bit of a view of their budget. Each of the numbers you see here are median San Antonio numbers for insurance, food, utilities, transportation, etc. And you can see that they're doing pretty well when it's just the two of them. They've got plenty of discretionary funding left over at the end of the month, and they've got a fair amount of green. You can see that Mary is about ready to have her first. And here comes the little kiddo. David and Mary both want to continue to work, find meaning in the work, they enjoy it, and so they've signed up for childcare for their new child. Here in Bexar County, that costs about $10,000 per year per child. We dropped the cost of childcare into the work, and now their budget is in a very difficult spot. They are very tight month to month, and what's going to make this more complicated is they've actually always wanted 2 children. Now we add in a second child, and the cost of childcare at this point sends them into the negative month to month, and they have a broken budget. Now, let's say that one of them decided to stop working. That would then drop their income down, and they would still be upside down on a month-to-month basis. The question comes up of, how normal are David and Mary? Are they an outlier as being low income or upper income? What do they look like? Let's look at the San Antonio more broadly. The median household annual income for San Antonio is just south of $63,000 a year. David and Mary together pull in about $70,000, putting them materially over the annual household average income. So they're doing better than most. And their children are 2 out of the 135,000 children under the age of 5 at any given point here in the city of San Antonio. And 65% of those children have all available parents in the workforce. So if it's one parent, they're working. If it's 2 parents, they're both working. So this means that we have a huge number of children that need a place to be during the day so that the parents can work. Some of us might go, well, in America, we're kind of used to saving money for education. This shouldn't be a new thing. However, when we've talked about that generally, we usually mean saving money for college. Now, there are some differences between college and childcare and early childhood education. First off, early childhood education at $10,000 per child per year actually costs more than in-state tuition at Texas A&M San Antonio. Ideally, you're at college for 4 years, but in early childhood, you're there for 5, when you're 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Additionally, by the time that you have a college-age child, you probably have had 3 or 4 promotions and are making materially more money than you were when you were in your early 20s. For college, we have things like 529s and Pell Grants and Perkins loans. None of those things exist for childcare, meaning that we have a very large burden placed on our youngest families at a time that their earning potential is at the lowest point that it ever will be again. For David and Mary to continue to work while both their children go through childcare means that they will be spending $100,000 for the benefit of being able to continue to work. You might be thinking, gosh, at $10,000 per child, is somebody making a lot of money out of this? And the answer is, they are not. Let's look at a typical budget for a center. With $400,000 coming in, let's say it's 40 kids times 10,000. You take out about $50,000 for facilities and another little bit north of $50,000 for materials. And then you take the balance of the money, it's mostly people costs. So you divide out the number of hours you need people to be there and the staffing ratios that are required to have, both for quality and for safety. We find that early child care centers pay about $13 an hour. We can look at that a couple of different ways. The Department of Labor ranks all jobs, something north of 580 types of jobs, and you could rank them based on their hourly pay. We find that early childhood educators are consistently near the very, very bottom of that list. And some of the jobs underneath them are also tipped jobs, which sometimes don't always show up in the calculation. So they're potentially even lower. Now let's look at a couple of job postings that we have found recently. Here's an early childhood education role for $12 an hour at a local center, or you can be a receptionist answering phones for $18 an hour, or you can work at H-E-B pulling together orders for curbside, where you can make $20 an hour and there's a 401k match and benefits on the first day. You can imagine that a lot of early childhood educators are taking a hard look at leaving early childhood and moving into other roles, particularly because many of these do not require further education. Now, this has created a significant problem, and many of our educators are leaving the profession, and even fewer are entering the profession. This is resulting in a net loss of childcare seats across our entire community, which will be a challenge for families who are looking for care. We're going to fly up very, very high. So, there are basically 4 sources of funding for childcare in America. One of those is families, and we have already seen that this is a fairly inelastic cost for families. They're already paying about as much as they can. Here's the challenge though. Over the last bunch of years, in other fields, the impact of wages has led to higher prices. My dad has a brew pub. He used to have a $10 hamburger, but cost of labor has gone up so much in the last 7 years, he no longer has a $10 hamburger, he has a $17 hamburger. However, if we took childcare from $10,000 a year to $17,000 a year, we would have families at massive numbers dropping out of the workforce. So families are about as stretched as they can go. The federal government puts in enough money to support about 13% of the eligible low-income children to be able to have access to childcare so their families can go to work. The state of Texas puts in just a smidge more, but we are left with still a waiting list just here in San Antonio, anywhere between 4,000 and 8,000 children on any given day who are waiting for access to one of those scholarships. Another source of funding could be philanthropy. But the numbers that we're talking about here, about $100 million a year, far greater than philanthropy can bear on an annual in and out basis. So the other source of funding is businesses. Now, some businesses do pay for childcare, but part of what we want to make clear here is that every business is paying for the impact of childcare. San Antonio is functionally at full employment. We have 3.4% unemployment, but as most of you know, that only calculates the people who would like to work and are looking for a job. The people who would like to work but cannot afford childcare and therefore are not looking, they're not calculated into that number. As more and more early childhood educators leave the profession into other roles, and providers cannot raise wages because they cannot raise tuition, the result of this is that prices will continue to rise and more families will drop out of the workforce, leading this red bar to become larger and shrinking our entire workforce. Because of that, wages for those who are still employed will need to go up. A local business leader who employs thousands of individuals recently shared with me that they had to increase their wages by 7% year over year, as opposed to the 2.5% or 3% that they normally do. And a key driver that led to that need for an increase was the impact of childcare and its cost and its inaccessibility. We are blessed to be able to do this with a tremendous board of advisors and together with 4 lead partners in the Institute for School and Community Partnerships, Workforce Solutions Alamo, United Way, and Pre-K for SA, along with north of 65 additional community partners. Our community has come together to write an impact plan that will increase access, quality, and affordability for childcare across the entire ecosystem. You remember the Bexar County kindergarten readiness rates. We were stopped at 49%. Our goal here is that at the end of this 3-year impact plan, that we will be up at 60% kindergarten ready, and at the end of 2030, that we are over 70% kindergarten ready. Let's take a look at what this might look like on the ground. Here are a couple of examples, not comprehensive, of the types of activities and how it would change a particular center and their experience. Let's take a look at David and Mary's youngest. Without the impact plan, potentially they found a local childcare center that is only licensed, not quality rated, that has somebody working with their infant who does not have a child development associates, and David and Mary have to bear the full cost of the childcare for their youngest. Now, let's flash forward 3 years, and as the impact plan is implemented and brought to bear, let's say the childcare center, instead of being licensed, said, we want to go beyond licensing and become quality rated. So with the coaching pathways that are developed in partnership with the community, we are able to provide them quality coaching to get them up to being Texas Rising Star 3 or 4-star rated, and then into a shared services alliance where they can make sure that they get the benefits of scale even while they stay a small business and have the best opportunity possible to be able to sustain that quality and sustain their business over time. Second, let's say that the child's teacher, instead of just being an employee who meets the minimum standards, that they were able to go through at no cost to the employee to earn their child development associates, take the assessment, receive a $500 bonus for completing that, and then another $500 bonus at 6 and 12 months down the road, giving them additional education and a $1,500 bonus over time for being able to do that. And they are hired then by this center to serve David and Mary's youngest. Then at the end of this, we are creating a search tool. Previously, David and Mary found the center maybe by driving by or typing childcare into Google. We will be developing a search tool where David and Mary will be able to describe a little bit about their family, learn what they're eligible for, and then search based on what matters to them. They will be able to say, we want to find something that is quality rated, that has space for an infant, that has space for a 3-year-old, and these things are true about that center. And they will be able to sort that for where there are vacancies that they can afford. That doesn't exist today and will be a great benefit. And that tool will also generate significant data. Other additional data from across the early childhood ecosystem will be brought together in a shared data platform that will enable policymakers, system leaders, and in those controlling investments into early childhood to identify patterns, find opportunities, and make smart investments to impact positively the entire ecosystem. From a policy standpoint, we have an opportunity at the local level as well as the state level to create something like an employer match program, where let's say David's employer said, look, I know that childcare is expensive. We really want to keep you, David. We are going to put up $1,500 in support of childcare for your youngest child or for each of your children. We could create a public fund, a public pool of money that would then match that dollar for dollar to reduce the cost of childcare by $3,000 for any given child and $6,000 for them as a family. And you can imagine the benefit of $6,000 a year for a family like David and Mary's. Collectively, these provide a fundamentally different picture for early childhood education across our city, for the child, for the educator, for the small business provider, for the workforce, and for the entire community taken together. If you are someone who is invested in and cares about education and brain development, we suggest to you that early childhood education is the most important place to go. If you're someone who is interested in the biggest philanthropic ROI, this is still the place. If you're interested in supporting young families, making sure that our public funds are used efficiently, that we create and drive thoughtful policy, we enable economic mobility for young families, that we take this on through systems level transformation so that each day gets better and better, that we have the opportunity to show that San Antonio can prove what's possible in early childhood education, and that this is also done through community developed solutions that are created in partnership, not done as a top-down approach. Each of those pieces, we believe, point to early childhood education as being the most impactful place to invest your time and energy and resources. Thank you for your time and hearing about our work today.